Humpty Dumpty, how he fell with a roll and a rumble, and fell off like a doll of a crumple by the butt of the magazine wall.
Welcome to James Joyce's divine and delirious comedy, Finnegans Wake. In this episode, number 13, we'll hear Irish-Canadian actor and my good friend and colleague Richard Harte performing pages 58 to 63 from chapter 3 of Joyce's last novel. I'm Adam Seelig, the director of the reading you'll soon hear. Finnegans Wake is a production of One Little Goat Theatre Company. For the next 5 years, One Little Goat will film and record all 17 chapters, roughly 30 hours, of Joyce's Finnegans Wake before live audiences in various locations, screening and releasing them along the way with the aim of completing the entire book in time for its 90th birthday, May the 4th of 2029. One Little Goat Theatre Company is an official charity in Canada and the United States. If you'd like to support our work, please visit us online at www.onelittlegoat.org to make a charitable donation. And if monetary support is not an option, you can still help this podcast by rating and reviewing it and by spreading the word. To get in touch, you'll find our email address on the One Little Goat Theatre Company website, and we'd love to hear from you. I dream, therefore I become. I'll soon describe how this statement relates to today's excerpt and to Finnegans Wake in general. In pursuit of our ever-elusive protagonist, H.C. Earwicker, we left off last episode with strongers versus softsies, two opposing groups of Dubliners. The former are in favor of punishing HCE for his alleged misdemeanors. The latter prefer to defend him, seeing his actions as, quote, human, erring, and condonable, close quote. Note here the initials for each word, H, E, and C, drawing on HCE's monogram. While, quote, the unfacts are too imprecisely few, close quote, about the wrongs Earwicker may have committed and where he may have escaped, Finnegans Wake is still determined to find out. Today's excerpt opens with a fact-finding mission, the narrative moving door to door and person to person to gather information on our protagonist. We saw in Chapter 2 how gossip spread across Dublin about Earwicker's alleged misdemeanor in Phoenix Park, a hazy event involving a cad, 2 girls, and 3 soldiers. Now we're going to get the word on the street, so to speak. Think of it as journalistic reportage, the result being a series of sound bites from a series of interviews, much as you might encounter on the nightly news. Or more specifically, think of the media's many street interviews over the years in search of one of the world's most mysterious people, the graffiti artist Banksy. The more testimony gathered, it seems, the less identifiable the person in question. Here we have 20 different Dubliners providing 20 different takes on Earwicker. Some attacking him, the strongers, others defending, the softsies, all of them comically contradictory and unreliable, including sound bites from 3 soldiers, an actress, an Irish jaunting car driver, a sweaty and out-of-breath tennis player, quote, a would-be martyr, close quote, a teenage revivalist, a girl detective terrifically named Sylvia Silence, and many others. Adeline Glass-Sheen elegantly observes that this reportage opens with 3 soldiers blaming 2 girls for Earwicker's fall, and closes the other way around, with 2 girls indicating 3 soldiers are behind it. Ultimately, this mishmash of testimony brings us no closer to finding Earwicker and the sin he may have committed. But it does clearly testify to James Joyce's, not to mention Richard Harte's, exceptional ear and register for Dublin dialogue. When I first read this reportage section along with Richard, I was curious about its many Buddhist references woven throughout. Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha himself, is mentioned, although this being Joyce, he merges with Sir Arthur Guinness of Guinness Brewing fame to become, quote, Siddharthar. Other Buddhist references here include Maya Prajapati, Buddha's stepmother, Arata Kalama and Asita, 2 Buddhist hermits, Buddha's sister teaching the Buddha to wear bracelets, Sakyamuni, another name for the Buddha, the tree where Buddha meditated, Asparas, the maidens who entertained the young Buddha, and Nirvana, Buddhism's celebrated concept of enlightenment, which here becomes, quote, nirvanasht. Why so much about this 2,500-year-old religious figure, the Buddha? I can answer that question with the help of Karen Armstrong's biography on the Buddha, appropriately titled Buddha. The following quote from Armstrong's outstanding book not only provides a key to the Buddhist motif vis-a-vis the ever-shifting identity of Earwicker, it also provides a key to the ever-shifting narrative of Finnegans Wake as a whole. Here's Armstrong. The terms self and myself were simply conventions. The personality had no fixed or changeless core. Every sentient being was in a state of constant flux. He or she was merely a succession of temporary, mutable states of existence. The Buddha pressed this message home throughout his life. Where the 17th century French philosopher René Descartes would declare, "I think, therefore I am," the Buddha came to the opposite conclusion. The more he thought in the mindful, yogic way he had developed, the clearer it seemed that what we call the self is a delusion. In his view, the more closely we examine ourselves, the harder it becomes to find anything that we can pinpoint as a fixed entity. The human personality was not a static being to which things happened. Put under the microscope of yogic analysis, each person was a process. The Buddha liked to use such metaphors as a blazing fire or a rushing stream to describe the personality. It had some kind of identity, but was never the same from one moment to another. At each second, a fire was different. It had consumed and recreated itself just as people did. In a particularly vivid simile, the Buddha compared the human mind to a monkey ranging through the forest. Quote, "It grabs one branch and then, letting that go, seizes another." Close quote. What we experience as the self is really just a convenience term because we are constantly changing. In the same way, milk can become successively curds, butter, ghee, and fine extract of ghee. There's no point in calling any one of these transformations milk, even though there is a sense in which it is correct to do so. As we heard from ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus in the previous podcast episode, no one ever steps in the same river twice. So too, as we just heard Armstrong describe, quote, "The Buddha liked to use metaphors as a rushing stream to describe the personality. It had some kind of identity, but was never the same from one moment to another," close quote. And Buddhism's conception of a person as a flexible process rather than fixed and finished now leads me to adapt Descartes' famous cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am, to the river-running stream of unconsciousness that comprises the flowing dream language of Finnegans Wake. I dream, therefore I become. Following this reportage section with its Buddhist motif, we learn of Earwicker's flight from the terror of Ireland/Errorland with a female Catholic, or papacy, much as Joyce eloped with Nora Barnacle in 1904. The next paragraph opens with one of my favorite sentences, a sentence that addresses and includes us, the audience, collectively reading the wake, as the narrative conveys us to a zone reminiscent of the 3,500-year-old Egyptian Book of the Dead. It's a zone most fitting for anyone attending a wake. Quote, "We seem to us, the real us, to be reading our Amenti in the 6th sealed chapter of the Going Forth by Black." Close quote. We then hear about a tall, masked man pulling a gun on HCE, although this anecdote, as another one of my favorite sentences indicates, is likely spurious. Quote, "But how transparently non-true, gentle writer." Close quote. Now it's time for Richard's performance of James Joyce's Finnegans Wake, page 58, line 23, to page 63, line 19, for the continuation of Chapter 3. The performance was shot and recorded at my home in Toronto on October 2nd, 2023, with a live audience. The film premiered at the Toronto Irish Film Festival, European Union Film Festival, and Bloomsday Film Festival at the James Joyce Centre in Dublin. The brief opening music you'll hear is my own arrangement of We Be Soldiers 3, a 17th century folk song referenced in the first sentence of today's excerpt, with Brandon Bach on drums and Adam Seelig, yours truly, on piano.
Pat and pat again. Fire for shot, Monsieur le Fusiliers. Ping pong for Saxaluti. 3 tonics, soldiers free, Cockaleek and Capapee of the cold stream. Guards were walking in, pardon me, je vous en prie, Montgomery Street. One voiced an opinion on which either way, pardon, nodding, all the inner camps concord. Je vous en prie, It was the first woman, they said, souped him that fatal Wellish day, Lily Cunningham's, by suggesting him they go in a field. Roth Maud Elfar, Ruth Red still stand. Wrath racked Ross, confessed Private Pat Markison, retro. Tuss. Thus contenters with Santoy's play. One of our coming Vauxhall on the boards, who is resting for the moment, she has been called by a noted stagey elocutioner, a waste-packet Sittons, was interviewed in a West End pewty parlour, looking perhaps even more pewty flushed in her cherry-derry Padua size, girdle and braces by the half-moon and 7 stars, russets from the blackamoor's head, amongst the climbing boys, and his eagle and child, and over the corn, and hay empters at their black and all black, Mrs. F.A. set aside, half in stage of whisper to her confidant Glass, while recoupering her cartwheel chaplet. A hat! We now know what timbers are back at Anonymous it does mean. She hoped Sid Arthur would get a Christmas portrait of orange, lemon-sized orchids with holigs and ether, from the theatre of the innocent, and as the world had been uncaned. Then, while it is odorous comparisoning to the sprang flowers of his birthdays, which was a veritable garden potty for the red worms and the charlatinas and all branches of climatitis. It has been such a wonderful night entirely. Added she, with many regards to Maha's plangipansies. Tot! Prehistoric, obitured to his dictaphone and entomologist. His proper nomen is Propertus Menom. A dustman, knock-named 7 churches in the employ of Messrs. Ashbourne, Saltpeter and Ashreborn prayer-makers Glintaluke, was asked by the sisterhood the vexed question during his midday collation of lever and buckram, alternatively with stink and kidney foy and a hash out, and thank heaven responded impulsively, We're just been propaganda in his nullity suit and what they took out of his ear among my own crush. All our fellow with O'Day sages with Arthur Callum, here's a cemented brick bucket on. A more nor usually sober car driver, who was jauntily hosing his runabout, Ginger Jane took a strong view. Lordy hosed her as he talked, and this is what he told me right men. Oh, Becker is just a plain thing tried to reform me in private life. But folks all have it by Brahmin's laws. He has parliamentary honours. The Scaffier, said Luigi. You know that man's brilliant savoir. Ma foi, you wish to have some omelette? Yes, lady. Good, my labour. Your egg, he must break himself. See, I crack. So, you sit in the well. Unbedimmt. A perspirer over 60 who was keeping up his tennises panted. He know how hard to want to collect them for Matthews. But diff pair, Flanders, climb wall and trespassing on doorbell. After full-blown Braddon, hear this fresky trotterella, a railway barmaid's view, and they call her Spiltier's rule, was thus expressed to sympathisers of the low-lying Death Avenue, and meant those objects of her pity-prompted ministrance to wet man in siphon. 'Tis ever too late to whistle when Phyllis Flood's so stable. It would be scarlet shame to jail him in lock-up, as was proposed to him by the Sedum's creature. What matter what merry tricks went off with his revolver her in connection with him being an orphan and enjoining such wicked ill him? Well done, Drumcollikill! Kitty Durrell is proud of you, was the reply of a BOT official. No blame gnut the board, while the daughters Benkletter murmured in unison, "God forgive his dirty legs." Brian Linsky, the cub cursor, was questioning his shouting backs, ball on a braggot, and gave a snappy comeback when saying, "Pah! Once more I hell bowl. I am for caveman chase and Sahara sex. Bork ya! Them two bitches ought to be leashed. Cane 'em. Up hog and Harhod. Pah!" A would-be martyr who was attending on Senator Citus where he had been taught to wear bracelets, when grilled on the point, revealed the undoubted fact that the consequence would be that as long as Mundi played his mango tricks under the misty tree, with shady Apsaras sheltering in his leaves license and his shadowers terrified by the potent bolts of interdiction, there would be fights all over Cuxhaven. Tosh. Missioner Ida Woongwell, the 17-year-old revivalist, said concerning the coincidence of interfizzing with grenadines and other respectable and disgusted persons using the park, that perpendicular person is a brute, but a magnificent brute. Caligula, Mr. Daniel McGrath, bookmaker, well known to Australian poor users of the Sydney Parade Bulletin, was as usual antipodal with his striving to die, happening to mellow, where splash cobbler. "We have meet 2 hourly," sang out El Kaplan Boy Cout, with the famous Padres Toreadors Cape Cast. "Meet 2 hourly, Matadeer." Dan Michael John, precentor of SS Smackin' Ollies, was proverbial with his upsy-duxy mutatus mutandos. Darren's Lord, sniff pox, Morgan's lady, flatter fun, took sides and crossed, and bowed to each other's views, and recrossed themselves. The dirty dubs up in their flies went too free. Echoed the dainty drabs down in their sanities. Ooh, Mona. Sylvia Silence, the girl detective, Minerva. But by now one hears turtlings all over Doveland, when supplied with informations as to the several facets of the case in her cosy-dozy bachelor's flat, quite overlooking John O'Dream's muse, leaned back in her really, truly easy chair to query restfully through her well-threaded syllables. Have you ever thought, reporter, that sheer greatness was his tragedy? Nevertheless, according to my considered attitudes for this act, he should pay the full penalty, pending pursuance as per subsect 32, section 11 of the CLA Act 1885, anything in this act to the contrary notwithstanding. Charlie Jilk began to sing, for he couldn't get on to Chelsea, but ended with, "Oh, he's got the sack that helped him out instead of his gladsome rags." Meagher, a naval rated, seated on one of the granite cromlech sets of our new fish ambles for the usual air eaten after the ever-popular act, with whom were Cuesta and Puella, piquant and quaint. This had a cold in her brain, while that felt a sink in her stomach, with what's wet, was encouraged, although near vanished himself, by one of his coffee ads to get your breath wet and cop it. And when they're chidden by her fast disaster to saddle up your pants, Neville. Thus Carl replied to her others, thanks kissing. "I lay my 2 finger buttons, fiancé Megger." He speaks. "He was to blame about your 2 velvet toys up Hornyman's Hill. As how can I blame him or any other pest man? But I also think, Pwelly Wally, by the siege of his trousers, there was someone else behind it. About your bottom blarneys, about your 3 drummers down Keysars Lane. Trite." Be these mere marching tailors' fablings of a race referend with odd man Rex? Is now all seen, heard, and forgotten? Can it was, one is fain in this leaden age of letters now to wit, that so diversified outrages, they have still to come, were planned and partly carried out against so staunch a covenant, or if it be true that any of those recorded ever took place from any we troll, be yes to and in aid of, are given to us by some who use the truth but sparingly, and we on this side ought to sorrow for their pricking pens on that account. The Seventh City, the Oro Vivla, the citadel of refuge. Whither would we believe the laymen and their counts? Beyond the outraged gaze of Adriatic, changing clothes with the beggar monster, the Hetherite had fled. Silent and under night's alto sonority, ship alone, raven of the wave, be mercy, Mara, he whence Rahulus, from the Osman's Dirtby on the old Vic, to forget and expiate manslaughter, and rebirthing and remerriment out of dead sickness to divine providence. If you are looking for the builder, deep your ear on the movie town, to league his lot, palm and pat, with a papacy. From my gavin I thee, if taken by my husband I thee had her. There was to be land, a luxurious land, emerald illum, the peasant pastured, in which by the fourth commandment with promise his days apostolic were to belong by the abundant mercy of him which thundereth from on high, murmured, would rise against him, with all which in the world franchisables and inhabitants as the Azagora, Elith, Phillips do him hurt, poor chink, ghostly following bodily, as were he made a curse for them, the corruptible, quick, saints of incorruption of unholy nation, the common or air in garden cast away, and red resurrection to condemn, so they might convince him. First fair or unfair is Cheops Exarchus, of their proper sins. Business bred to speak with a stiff upper lip to all men, and most occasions the man we want of took little short of fighting chances, but for all that he or his care were subjected to the horrors of the premier terror of our land. Perhaps we seem to us, the real us, to be reading our Amenti in the 6th sealed chapter of the Going Forth by Black. It was after the show at Wednesbury that one tall man, humping a suspicious parcel, when returning late amid a dense particular on his home way from the second house of the Bull and Burgess Christie ministers by the old spot, Roy's Corner, had a Barkus revolver placed to his face with the words, "You're shot, Major," by an unknowable assailant, masked, against whom he'd been jealous over, not a Crabtree or Pomona Evelyn. More than that, when the waylayer, not a Luca Lizard diocesan or even of the Glentalock Sea, but hailing from the proud Little Britain, mentioning in a by the way that he, the cross-upper, in addition to Reed's cutlass centre blade, a loaded Hobson's, which left only twin alternatives as vice versa. Either he would surely shoot her, the aunt, by pistol. She could be okay sure of that. Or failing on such, bash and patch his blank face beyond recognition, pointed the ass with Gaelish go what business Thornton had with that Kane's fender, only to be answered by the aggravated assaulted that was the snaps for him mid-weeks to sultry well go and find out if he was surely well able. But how transparently non-true, gentle writer. His feet one is not a tall man, not a tall man. No such parson, no such fender, no such lumber, no such race. Was it supposedly in connection with a girl, Miriam Huey or Colores Archer, under Flaggy Bridge, for and there is but one living her new bridges are old? Or to explode his 12-chamber and force a shrievalty entrance at the heavy-built able body in a butcher blue blouse from One Life, One Suit, the man who wears store, with the most decisive bottle of single in his possession, seized after dark by the town guard at Have-you-cut Emerald's Temperance Gateway, was there in the gate's way.
That was Richard Harte reading pages 58 to 63 of Chapter 3 from Finnegans Wake, recorded live in Toronto on October 2nd, 2023. Join us for episode 14 in a fortnight when Richard continues with the next 5 pages of Chapter 3, including the delightful Strawberry Frolic paragraph. To be sure you don't miss the episode, why not follow or subscribe to this podcast? For more on One Little Goat's Finnegans Wake project, including transcripts of this podcast, the complete film of Chapter 1, visit our website at onelittlegoat.org. And to hear about upcoming performances and screenings, join our mailing list also on our website. One Little Goat Theatre Company is a non-profit, artist-driven, registered charity in the United States and Canada that depends on donations from individuals to make our productions, including this one, possible. If you're able, please make a tax-deductible donation through our website, www.onelittlegoat.org. See you in 2 weeks. Finnegans Wake is made possible by Friends of One Little Goat Theatre Company and the Emigrant Support Programme of the Government of Ireland. Thank you for your support. And thank you to the artists for this episode: Richard Harte, sound by William Bembridge, podcast production by Sean Rasmussen, stage management by Sandi Becker, directed by yours truly, Adam Seelig. Music arranged and performed on the piano by me with Brandon Bach on drums, and recorded at Sound Department in Toronto. A big thanks to our wonderful live audience of Sandi Becker, David Mackett, Andrew Moody, Kathy Murphy, Nomi Rotbard, Arlo Rotbard-Seelig, Adam Seelig, Aaron Tucker, and Catherine Veneri. Thank you to everyone at the Irish Consulate in Toronto. Thank you to production consultants Kathy Murphy and Andrew Moody, and to music consultants Warwick Hart and Kevin Kennedy. Thank you for listening.